Ethan Hayes pressed his forehead against the cold observation window of New Terra Research Station, watching distant stars blur into streams of light as the facility orbited through the crystalline nebula. At 16 years old, he had already earned 3 degrees in xenolinguistics and ancient civilizations, yet none of his achievements seemed to matter here. The other students saw only a scrawny human kid with messy auburn hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers from taking handwritten notes on actual paper, a habit that made the alien students laugh. The station's corridors hummed with activity as beings from 40 different worlds moved between classes. Some floated in gravitational bubbles, others skittered on crystalline legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in specialized suits. Ethan adjusted his worn leather satchel and headed toward the archive of lost civilizations, the only place where he truly felt at home. Professor Quillix, a wise Ventralian with silver tentacles and bioluminescent patterns, greeted him with a gentle pulse of green light. The universal translator on Ethan's collar converted the light patterns to words. "Young human, you spend more hours here than in your dormitory. The ancient dead make poor companions." "The ancient dead don't care that I'm from a backwater planet," Ethan replied softly, running his fingers along shelves containing data crystals from civilizations that had risen and fallen before humans even discovered fire. "They don't mock my accent or call me a barbarian behind my back." Quilix's tentacles rippled with concern. "The Corthan students again?" Ethan nodded but said nothing more. What was there to say? That Varax and his friends had filled his quarters with compressed atmosphere from a methane world last week, nearly suffocating him. That they regularly deleted his research files and called it accidents. The station administration always sided with the wealthy Corthan families who funded much of the facility. He pulled out a data crystal he had been studying for months. It contained fragments from the Dravenous civilization, a species that had vanished 12,000 years ago. Most scholars dismissed them as primitive reptilian creatures, but Ethan had noticed patterns in their writings that suggested something far more complex. "Look at this," he said, projecting the holographic text into the air. "Everyone translates this word as beast or monster, but the context is wrong. See how it appears in their sacred texts? The grammar structure suggests reverence, not fear. I think they were talking about intelligent beings, not animals." Quillix moved closer, examining the projection. "The celestial serpents? That old myth? Ethan, those stories have been discredited by every serious xenologist. What if they were wrong?" Ethan's eyes burned with intensity. What if the celestial serpents weren't myths but actual living beings? The Dravones had no reason to lie in their religious texts. They described these creatures with such detail, the way they communicated through harmonic frequencies, how they could manipulate thermal energy, their social structures. Before Quillix could respond, the station's alarm system screamed to life. Red lights pulsed through the archive as an automated voice announced in multiple languages. "Unauthorized access detected in Restricted Zone 7. All students return to quarters immediately. Security protocols active." Ethan's heart raced. Restricted Zone 7 was where the station kept dangerous artifacts and specimens deemed too hazardous for regular study. He had tried to access those files before, always denied. His fingers flew across his personal datapad, exploiting a security backdoor he had discovered weeks ago. "Ethan, no," Quillix warned, but the boy was already pulling up restricted files. His face went pale as information flooded his screen. "They found something," he whispered. 3 months ago, a salvage team recovered stasis pods from a Dravonis research vessel. The contents were classified immediately. His hands shook as he read further. "They're alive. There are living celestial serpents in this station and nobody told anyone." Director Vinus materialized in the archive doorway. The Corthan administrator stood 7 feet tall with chitinous gray skin and 4 arms, each ending in precise manipulating claws. Her multifaceted eyes fixed on Ethan with cold calculation. "Mr. Hayes, you are confined to quarters effective immediately. Accessing classified materials is grounds for expulsion." "You have intelligent beings locked up down there," Ethan said, standing his ground despite his knees trembling. The Dravonis text described them as having consciousness, language, culture. "You can't just imprison them." "We have 3 biological specimens of extinct fauna in proper containment," Viness corrected. "Your romantic interpretation of ancient text does not override scientific protocol. Let me see them. Let me try to communicate. If I'm wrong, I'll accept any punishment. But if I'm right, if they are intelligent, then keeping them caged is a crime under galactic convention." Vinus's mandibles clicked with irritation. You are a child playing at scholarship. These specimens are dangerous. One is severely injured and the others are in developmental stasis. Your interference could damage invaluable research materials. They're not materials, Ethan insisted. Please, Director. Give me one chance. I've decoded portions of the Dravonis harmonic language. I can try to establish communication. Before Vinus could respond, a massive energy surge rippled through the station. The lights flickered, and a sound unlike anything Ethan had ever heard echoed through the walls. It was part music, part earthquake, and it carried emotion so profound that tears sprang to his eyes without understanding why. Grief, rage, and desperate love all woven together in a frequency that made his bones vibrate. The adult specimen has breached primary containment, a security officer reported through Vinus's communication device. She's generating thermal fields that are overloading our systems. 2 guards are injured. She's calling for help, Ethan said, his voice barely a whisper. She knows her babies are here and she can't reach them. Vinus turned her insectoid gaze on the human boy. You have 10 minutes. Ethan sprinted through the corridors behind Director Vinus and the security team, his thermal suit feeling 2 sizes too large as he struggled to seal it properly. The temperature dropped dramatically as they approached Restricted Zone 7. Frost crept along the walls in delicate crystalline patterns, and each breath Ethan took formed clouds in the air despite the suit's heating elements. Through reinforced windows, he glimpsed the chaos inside Laboratory Complex Beta. A creature of pure majesty filled the space, her scales shifting between pearl white and deep sapphire, depending on how the emergency lights hit them. She was enormous, perhaps 50 feet from her elegant snout to the tip of her tail, with wings that seemed woven from starlight itself. But what struck Ethan most were her eyes, ancient and filled with intelligence that matched any being he had ever met. She was injured badly. One wing hung at an awkward angle, and several scales along her flank were cracked and bleeding a luminescent silver fluid. Yet she stood protectively over 3 containment pods, her body generating waves of intense cold that had frozen the laboratory equipment solid. Solaris, Ethan whispered, pulling the name from Dravonis texts he had memorized. The Dawn Mother. That is not her name, Vinus said sharply. That is mythology. Then why is she matching every description from the sacred texts? Ethan pressed his hand against the window. The thermal manipulation, the protective stance, even the color patterns. Director, I need to go in there. Absolutely not. She has already put 3 security personnel in the medical bay. Because you're treating her like an animal instead of a mother protecting her children. Ethan pulled up his datapad, showing the harmonic frequency patterns he had decoded. The Dravonis didn't write fiction. They wrote history. Please let me try. Vinus's mandibles clicked in agitation, but she gestured to the airlock. You have 5 minutes before we deploy neural suppressors. If she kills you, it will be a regrettable waste of potential. Ethan cycled through the airlock, the cold hitting him like a physical blow despite his suit. His breath came in short gasps as he stepped into the laboratory. Solaris immediately focused on him, her massive head swinging around with predatory precision. Energy crackled along her scales in warning patterns. He held up his datapad and activated the harmonic translator he had built, based on Dravonis musical notation. The device emitted a series of tones, each one carefully crafted. Peace, Great Mother. I come to help. Your young ones are safe, Solaris froze. Her eyes, each the size of dinner plates, widened with something that looked like shock. She responded with her own harmonics, a sound so beautiful and complex that Ethan's translator struggled to keep up. You speak the old tongue? How? The Shapers have been silent for millennia. I learned from the Shapers' writings, Ethan replied through his device, adjusting frequencies as he went. I am Ethan of humanity. I mean no harm. You are injured. Please let me help. Solaris studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she lowered her massive head until she was at eye level with the small human. You are barely more than a hatchling yourself. Why do you speak for these others who cage me? I don't speak for them. I speak for what's right. Ethan carefully approached one of the containment pods. Inside he could see an egg the size of a barrel, its surface covered in swirling patterns that pulsed with inner light. These are your children? My last clutch. The smugglers took us from the frozen gardens during the singing season. They separated me from my eggs, hurt me when I fought back. I thought I would never see them again. Her harmonics trembled with emotion. Then I woke here, sensed them nearby, broke free to find them. The smugglers are gone, Ethan assured her. The salvage team found you adrift in a damaged ship. They didn't know what you were. They thought you were just rare specimens. Just specimens, Solaris repeated, her voice heavy with sorrow. The Shapers once called us keepers of ancient truth. Now we are specimens. Ethan felt anger burn in his chest. Not to me. Not to anyone who matters. I'm going to fix this, I promise. Over the next hour, Ethan worked with the medical team to treat Solaris's injuries. She allowed them to approach only because Ethan stayed by her side, translating and explaining every procedure. The wing would heal, but it would take time. Throughout it all, she never took her attention far from the 3 pods containing her eggs. They should have hatched weeks ago, she told Ethan. But the stasis field has kept them suspended. I can feel their confusion, their fear. They don't understand why they cannot emerge. Can we safely disable the stasis? Ethan asked the technicians. A Pelthian engineer named Nira, one of the few students who had never mocked Ethan, checked the readings. The pods are stable, but if we release the stasis, the eggs will hatch within hours. Are we prepared for that? Are any of us prepared for miracles? Ethan replied. He looked at Director Vinus, who had been observing everything with her inscrutable compound eyes. They deserve to be born free, not in a laboratory cage. Vinus considered this. Very well. But you, Mr. Hayes, are now officially responsible for their well-being. If anything goes wrong, it falls on you. I accept that responsibility. The stasis fields deactivated with a soft hum. Solaris immediately pressed her snout against each pod, humming a complex melody that made the eggs vibrate in response. Ethan watched in awe as cracks appeared in the first egg, spreading in geometric patterns. A small snout pushed through, followed by a head covered in scales that gleamed like rubies. The hatchling tumbled out, awkward and unsteady, chirping in high-pitched harmonics. Solaris carefully caught her baby before it could fall, cradling it gently. Ember, she sang. My brave little Ember. The second egg hatched moments later, revealing a hatchling with scales of frosted silver. This one immediately began exploring, sniffing everything within reach with fearless curiosity. Frost, Solaris named him, amusement in her harmonics. Always seeking, never still. The third egg took longer. When it finally cracked open, the hatchling that emerged had scales that shifted colors like storm clouds. Gray and purple and electric blue. It chirped loudly, demanding attention, and Solaris rumbled with laughter. Tempest. Yes, that suits you perfectly. Ethan felt tears streaming down his face as he watched the reunion. The 3 hatchlings, each about the size of a large dog, tumbled over each other in their eagerness to be close to their mother. Solaris wrapped her wings around them, her entire body vibrating with a purr that Ethan's translator interpreted as pure joy. Thank you, small shaper, Solaris told him. You have given me back everything that matters. Ethan, my name is Ethan. Ethan who speaks truth, she corrected. That is how you will be remembered in the songs of my people. Over the following days, Ethan moved into the laboratory complex, sleeping on a cot near the environmental controls. Director Vinus had authorized converting the entire wing into a proper habitat, though she made it clear this was temporary until the Galactic Council decided what to do with the celestial serpents. The hatchlings grew at an astonishing rate. Within a week, they had doubled in size and were forming distinct personalities. Ember was bold and protective, always the first to investigate anything new. Frost was clever and gentle, fascinated by the station's technology. Tempest was playful and mischievous, constantly getting into trouble and then looking innocent when caught. They adored Ethan. He was small enough not to be threatening, and he spent hours teaching them games and showing them holographic images of different worlds. They learned to play fetch with ice spheres that Frost could create, and they invented a game that involved trying to steal Ethan's datapad while he worked. Nira became a regular visitor, bringing food and helping Ethan with his research. She was the only other student who seemed genuinely happy about the celestial serpent's presence. The Corthan students are calling you Dragon Boy now, she mentioned. One evening, as they watched the hatchling sleep in a pile against Solaris's side, better than what they called me before, Ethan replied. He was teaching himself the full harmonic language, spending hours each day in conversation with Solaris. She spoke of her world, Dravonis Prime, a planet of eternal glaciers and crystal forests where her people had lived for millions of years. We were few, even in our golden age, she explained. We do not breed often and each clutch is precious. The Shapers, the 2-legged ones like you, they helped us build our society. Together we created wonders. But then the Shapers began to change, to forget the old ways. They fought among themselves and their conflicts destroyed much of our world. My people fled to the deep ice and the Shapers vanished. We thought they were extinct. Some of them survived and spread to other worlds, Ethan said. But they forgot you. The knowledge was lost. Until you found it again. Solaris's harmonics carried warmth. Perhaps that is the pattern of things. Forgetting and remembering, loss and rediscovery. You are young, Ethan, who speaks truth, but you carry old wisdom. I just read a lot of books. Books are memories made permanent. To read them is to remember for those who cannot. 3 weeks after the hatching, everything changed. Ethan was teaching Frost how to manipulate thermal energy in precise ways when alarms blared throughout the station. Director Vinus's voice came over every speaker. Security alert. Unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. Ethan rushed to the observation deck with Nira. Through the massive windows, they could see 3 sleek black ships approaching the station. They bore no identification markings, but their weapon arrays were clearly visible. Smugglers. Nira breathed. They must have tracked the stasis pods. The smuggler ships opened fire without warning, energy bolts hammering the station's shields. Ethan felt the entire structure shudder beneath his feet as he ran back toward the laboratory complex. His heart pounded with a single thought. He had to protect Solaris and her children. He found the celestial serpents in a state of high alert. Solaris had positioned herself between the hatchlings and the door, her scales crackling with barely contained energy. The 3 young ones huddled together, chirping in fear. They've come for us, Solaris said, her harmonics tight with tension. The ones who caged us before. I can sense their intention through the hull. I won't let them take you. Ethan's voice shook, but his determination was absolute. He activated the laboratory's security protocols, reinforcing the doors and windows. Director Vinus will never allow it. Your director cannot stop them if they breach the station. Solaris lowered her head to nuzzle her children, trying to comfort them. I will fight them. You should go, small one. This is not your battle. Yes, it is. Ethan pulled up tactical displays on his datapad. The smuggler ships were systematically disabling the station's defenses. New Terra wasn't a military facility. It had minimal weapons. You're my family now. All of you. I don't abandon family. The word family made Solaris's eyes widen. In celestial serpent culture, as Ethan had learned, family bonds were sacred and eternal. To claim family with another species was almost unheard of. You honor us, Ethan, who speaks truth, she said softly. Very well. We fight together. The station shook violently as one of the smuggler ships docked. Ethan could hear weapons fire in the corridors outside, security teams engaging boarders. He frantically sent messages to the Galactic Council, to every authority he could reach, attaching all his research proving the celestial serpents were intelligent beings deserving protection under sapient rights laws. Nira burst into the laboratory, her fur standing on end in fear. They're coming this way. They have heavy weapons and combat mechs. Finus ordered an evacuation, but these smugglers are blocking the escape pods. Then we make our stand here. Ethan looked at the 3 hatchlings. They were bigger now, nearly the size of horses, but still just children. The thought of them being caged again, or worse, being sold to collectors who would treat them as exotic animals, made rage burn through his fear. He turned to Solaris. Can you teach me your battle songs? The harmonics your people used for defense? That knowledge takes years to master. I'm a fast learner, and I have technology that might compensate for what I lack in natural ability. Over the next 10 minutes, while the sounds of fighting grew closer, Solaris taught Ethan the basic structure of defensive harmonics. These weren't just sounds, but complex waveforms that could interfere with electronic systems, disrupt neural functions, and even manipulate temperature in tactical ways. Ethan modified his translator, his fingers flying across the controls with desperate speed. He routed it through the laboratory's sound system, amplifying and shaping the output. It was crude compared to what a celestial serpent could do naturally, but it might work. The laboratory doors exploded inward. 6 armored figures rushed in, carrying weapons designed to fire neural nets that would paralyze their targets. Behind them, a massive combat mech squeezed through the doorway, its weapon systems targeting Solaris. Fire! The lead smuggler commanded. Ethan activated his modified system, the laboratory filled with harmonics so powerful that the very air seemed to vibrate. The smugglers' weapons sparked and died. Their armor systems went haywire, displays flickering and life support cutting out. The combat mech stumbled, its targeting computers overwhelmed. Solaris didn't waste the opportunity. She lunged forward with shocking speed for her size, her tail whipping around to knock 3 smugglers off their feet. Frost, brave despite his fear, generated a wave of intense cold that froze the floor beneath the combat mech. It lost traction and crashed down heavily. Ember and Tempest protected their siblings, creating a barrier of thermal energy that made the air shimmer. Any smuggler who tried to approach found their suits overheating or freezing unpredictably. But more smugglers were coming. Ethan could see them on his sensors, dozens of them converging on the laboratory. They were going to be overwhelmed. "Attention, smuggler vessels," a new voice boomed through the station's communication systems. "This is Galactic Enforcement Cruiser Righteous Path. You are in violation of 17 interstellar laws, including attempted kidnapping of sapient beings. Power down your weapons immediately or be fired upon." Ethan felt hope surge through him. His messages had gotten through. He pulled up external cameras and saw a massive military vessel decloaking near the station, its weapons arrays making the smuggler ships look like toys. The fighting stopped almost immediately. The smugglers, realizing they were outgunned and facing serious legal consequences, surrendered. Galactic enforcement teams swept through the station, arresting the boarders and securing the smuggler ships. Captain Joran of the Righteous Path was a towering Vrelnish with crystal-based biology. She entered the laboratory with her security team and stopped dead when she saw Solaris and the hatchlings. "By the void," she breathed. The reports were true. Celestial serpents, actual living celestial serpents. "They're people," Ethan said firmly, stepping protectively in front of the young ones. "Not specimens, not cargo. People with rights." Captain Joran's crystalline face reflected the laboratory lights as she inclined her head respectfully toward Solaris. "No one here disputes that, young human. The Council received your evidence. They've issued an emergency decree recognizing celestial serpents as a protected sapient species. These criminals will face justice for their crimes." Over the next month, New Terra Station became the center of galactic attention. Scientists, diplomats, and journalists arrived from every corner of known space, all wanting to see the celestial serpents. But Ethan made sure they did so on Solaris's terms. No one entered without permission. No invasive tests. No treating them as curiosities. The hatchlings continued to grow, now the size of small shuttles. They had learned to modulate their harmonics to speak with other species directly, no longer needing Ethan's translator. Their personalities blossomed. Ember became a natural leader, brave and decisive. Frost developed a fascination with technology that rivaled Ethan's own. Tempest discovered a love for music, creating harmonic compositions that brought tears to listeners' eyes. Director Vines, to her credit, admitted her mistakes. She worked with Ethan to transform part of the station into a proper celestial serpent embassy, a place where Solaris and her children could live with dignity while decisions were made about their future. The Galactic Council convened a special session to address the situation. Ethan, still just 16, found himself testifying before representatives from 200 worlds. "These are not animals," he told the assembly, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "They are people with a rich culture, complex language, and emotional depth that equals or exceeds any species in this chamber. The Dravonis Shapers, our distant ancestors, knew this. They built a civilization alongside the celestial serpents. We forgot that truth, but we can remember it now. We can choose to honor it." A Korthan representative, one of Varix's uncles, stood to speak. "The boy makes pretty speeches, but practical concerns remain. Where will these creatures live? Their homeworld is inaccessible, locked in permanent ice age with atmospheric conditions that would destroy most ships attempting to land." "Then we build ships that can land there," Ethan replied. "We terraform a habitat. We do whatever it takes because that's what you do for people who deserve to go home." Solaris herself addressed the Council through the communication systems, her harmonics translated for all to understand. "My people are few now, scattered and hidden. But we remember. We remember the time before fear, when different species worked together to create beauty instead of fighting over resources. Ethan, who speaks truth, has shown me that such times might come again. Not immediately, perhaps, but someday." The vote was nearly unanimous. The Galactic Council would fund an expedition to Dravonis Prime, using cutting-edge technology to brave the planet's defenses. They would return Solaris and her children home and establish a permanent embassy to rebuild relations with any surviving celestial serpents. But it would take months to prepare, months that Ethan spent teaching the hatchlings everything he could about the wider galaxy. They would be ambassadors for their people, and he wanted them ready. Nira often joined these lessons, and gradually other students did too. Even some of the Corthan students, shamed by the contrast between their behavior and Ethan's courage, began to change their attitudes. Ferex himself came one day, standing awkwardly at the habitat entrance. "I was wrong about you," he said simply. "About humans in general. I let prejudice blind me to truth. That's unworthy of a scholar." Ethan accepted the apology. Grudges were pointless. What mattered was moving forward. The day of departure arrived with ceremony and emotion. A specially designed ship, the Dawn's Promise, stood ready to carry its precious cargo. Ethan stood with Solaris and her children one last time in the habitat that had been their home. Ember nuzzled Ethan with her massive head, now nearly as large as his entire body. "You will not come with us?" "I can't," Ethan said, fighting back tears. "The journey is too dangerous for someone with my physiology. The radiation alone would kill me within hours. But I'll visit someday, I promise. When I'm older and we've built better ships." "You are already in our songs," Frost said, his voice carrying harmonics of gratitude. "Ethan who speaks truth, the small shaper who remembered what others forgot." "Guardian of hatchlings," Tempest added, playfully bumping Ethan with his snout. "Even if you are very small and fragile." Solaris wrapped one wing gently around Ethan, careful not to crush him. "You gave me back my children and my freedom. That debt can never be fully repaid. But know this, you will always have family among the celestial serpents. Always have a place in our frozen gardens should you wish to visit. And when your time comes to pass into the next phase of existence, your name will be sung with the greatest heroes of my people." Ethan couldn't speak. He simply held on to her as long as he could, this magnificent being who had changed his life forever. The Dawn's Promise launched to cheers from the assembled crowds. Ethan watched from the observation deck as it shrank to a point of light, then vanished into faster-than-light travel. Nira stood beside him, her small hand finding his. "You're crying," she observed. "I'm saying goodbye to family." He wiped his eyes, but also saying hello to possibility. "They're going home, Nira. After everything they've been through, they're going home." "And you? What's next for the famous dragon boy?" Ethan smiled despite his tears. "I finish my education. I become the best xenolinguist and cultural bridge I can be, and I make sure what happened to Solaris never happens to anyone else. There are probably other species out there, forgotten or dismissed as animals. Someone needs to speak for them. That's a big responsibility for one person. Then I'll need help." He looked at her. "Interested?" Nira's large eyes sparkled. "Always." 2 months later, Ethan received a transmission from Dravonis Prime. The Dawn's Promise had successfully navigated the planet's defenses. Solaris and her children were home, reunited with a population of celestial serpents larger than anyone had hoped. Nearly 1,000 of them living in the deep ice, waiting for the day when the galaxy would remember them again. The message included a recording of the hatchlings, now almost fully grown, playing in crystalline forests that sparkled with bioluminescence. They sang a new song, one that wove together ancient celestial serpent harmonics with melodies Ethan had taught them, a fusion of two cultures creating something entirely new. Ethan saved that recording and listened to it every night before sleep. It reminded him that bridges could be built between any peoples, no matter how different, if someone was willing to take the first step. He was no longer the mocked nerd, the lonely human who didn't fit in. He was Ethan who speaks truth, guardian of dragons, and his real work was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless voices waiting to be heard, and he would listen to them all.